Have you checked the children? Your little master.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if you please, you join me here for a bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King. It's Reezy, everybody, obviously. Bienvenidos, welcome to the horror show. So very stoked to have you here for my weekly worship every Tower Tuesday. I've been doing this for over 300 episodes. It is still a continuous pleasure and one that I look forward to very greatly. And this latest episode, covering all things El Rey, my beloved sidekick, my favorite author, as you see by the Tower of Tones behind me, is brought to you by none other than our patron here at the Horror Show channel, Heather Smith. And Heather has been very vigilantly over the last few months making sure that I finished something that we started many years ago at this particular point, because Horror Show has, boy, we're in like our 7th or 8th season now. Anyway, craziness, but I'm so very happy that she was persistent and still continues to awesomely support us here at the channel as a patron. But so we initially reviewed the first and the second Children of the Corn films together, and it was myself, Cecil Laird, and Marsha Parker, and we were like, well, I personally love the first film, love the remake, and then all subsequent entries, they have their positives, but they're schlocky, they're cheesy, still entertaining though, at least in my estimation, and so we figured it might be a little bit easier as opposed to focusing entire episodes on each film. We would do them in tandem, we would do them 2 at a time. And so that's why we did the original with Linda Hamilton and then Children of the Corn 2, The Final Sacrifice, in the same video. And so the plan was to do 3 and 4 together, 5 and 6, and so on and so forth. But that plan went on the back burner because the channel was growing significantly because of some of the IT coverage for the 2017 film, and just we were seeing an explosive expansion of just not just viewership, but excuse me. Just also, I mean, subscribers and everything. It was a very fun wave that we were riding at that particular time. And so the plan was at least shelved for a number of years. And then Heather Smith was just like, yo, I'm going to start requesting them. And Cecil and I determined that, hey, let's 2 birds, 1 stone it. Let's make these, as opposed to exclusive, only available to the patrons, we would actually also have them available as official episodes of Hail to Stephen King. So I did just that. I covered 3 and 4 together, I covered 5 and 6, and now we are finally to the end of the road, and it's the end of the road because of the fact that these are the only 2 Children of the Corn films, that, at least that were left, that up until this point I had not yet watched, but also not yet reviewed. So I know at the timing of this filming specifically, Heather had requested the 2009 remake. Unfortunately, we had already covered that. Like, I know I talked about it at least a few different times. I had some bits with the short story coverage where I was comparing the OG to the remake and some, nuances and just different approaches that they both took. And then I think I did another one specifically for the anniversary of the 2009 remake from the Sci-Fi Channel. So I know that Heather had requested that I take another look at the 2009 Sci-Fi Channel Anchor Bay excellent version. My favorite actual, it's the closest to the short story, and it's my personal favorite of all of the, I believe there's 10 or 11 now, Children of the Corn films, 11 now. So we still haven't seen that 11th one. This one goes to 11 because it's just been sitting around, and it was shown in Sarasota during the pandemic in 2020 2 times, and nothing. So who knows when we'll finally get that entry from the director of Equilibrium. But so as opposed to taking another discussion about the delightfully dark and very much embracing its R rating 2009 version, Heather, I definitely urge you to go and check out the Stephen King focus playlist. But I mean, you can search and just search Children of the Corn specifically on our channel, and you can very easily, I'll make sure to put a link to my discussions about that in the description box below here, in the end credits and stuff like that. But yeah, so that meant that as opposed to talking about 2009 again, Heather, and to all of the viewers here today, I jumped up to the 7th entry, which technically came out before the 2009 film, and it is included in this 6-film collection that I have here. Decently priced, for 6 films. You've got Final Sacrifice all the way through. The one, it's listed on the DVD menu as being Children of the Corn 7 Revelation, I believe it is, but I don't believe that it was actually released with a number. This was the first one, because the previous being Children of the Corn 666, Isaac coming back and everything. Yeah, they were like, let's stop doing numbers, let's just, do a subtitle and leave it at that. And I will at least say about this particular film that was released in October of 2001, on October 9th to be specific, that I was a little disappointed at least with the title, because they've had some bangers, man, like Urban Harvest and Fields of Terror and stuff like that. So, I was like, okay, you guys could have gone at least a little bit more original with the subtitle, but that doesn't mean that even though this is one of the weakest entries in all of these films, that there isn't still stuff to appreciate. So, as always, I have my trusty list of factoids and stuff like that here, but big thing to keep in mind is that between 1995 and 2001, Dimension put out 5 different Children of the Corn films. So 5 Children of the Corn films in 6 years. They're just cranking those suckers out about every year. So I think there was like maybe a 2-year gap in between a few of the entries, but yeah, 5 films in 6 years between 95 and 2001. They're just rolling these suckers out, man. And it was relatively low budget, and just like a lot of those previous entries, they spent like $2.5 million on this film. And you can definitely tell it's a lot of the same location. It's relatively grounded, and also, intriguingly enough, for those who have seen Urban Harvest, at least as far as like setting and stuff goes, and some of the like just vibes of it, it had the most of that feeling. Urban Harvest took place in Chicago. Now, this one is in Nebraska, but it's in Omaha, and this building, this like decrepit building that the lead actress, who is played by Claudette Mink, she was in all kinds of different genre-centric stuff. So she had a very small role in Monkey Bone, which I had totally forgotten had a character playing Stephen King who had been pulled into that world. That's a crazy little factoid. But she also had a small role in Paycheck, and she did a lot of genre television work, okay? So Claudette did Sliders, Dead Like Me, Battlestar Galactica, the revival of that, Reaper, Fringe. So yeah, just very well-versed as far as that sort of storytelling goes on the small screen. And then the King connection here is that she was also on the Kingdom Hospital show. I think she was like the reporter, so she was on maybe 3-4 episodes, something like that. But yeah, so it's cool that Claudette, our lead actress, had the King connection. And so she's basically trying to figure out what the hell happened to her grandmother. And her grandmother was in this, decrepit place, as I mentioned, this old building that was actually constructed on the same grounds where there was this horrible tent fire where a bunch of cult kids, you know where the connection is going here, they're part of this weird little sect, and they all burned alive, and pretty much the only survivor, or at least the only one that we are at least initially aware of, is Claudette Mink's grandmother, and yet she has gone missing. And so, yes, our lead lady shows up to try to figure out what happened, and most of it takes place in this condemned building where there's only a few residents that have stayed. And it's funny because they were all being evicted and kicked out because, the management was, the property people or whatever were not going to continue maintaining anything, although they still have running water, they still have electricity, so those proverbial plugs have yet to be pulled. And this was directed by a guy by the name of Guy Major. I'm not sure how to properly pronounce him, but he was a American Egyptian, actually. He was born in Cairo, and primarily genre stuff on an independent level, so he was most noteworthy for Stepfather 3. So there you go, the connection of low-budget horror and, sequelized low-budget horror is obviously on display here. But a couple other things of note. A girl named Crystal Lowe, who is like the very obvious TNA in this film. She's one of the only people still living in this building that Claudette's character is trying to figure out what happened with her grandmother in, and she's showing off her goodies. There's even a very odd scene where she invites Claudette's character into her home, and she's just like taking off all her clothes in front of her. I guess since she's playing a stripper, it kind of makes sense because, it's like the locker room aspect. They're like, hey, we're all girls here, whatever. But there was kind of a mild sapphic lipstick lesbo vibe to that scene in particular. But yeah, so she's one of the only residents left, and then you have a couple other very cliched folks. You've got this angry guy in a wheelchair who you don't really find out much of anything about him. There's also there's a front desk like stoner guy who is the closest thing I guess that we have to comic relief in this movie. Yeah, he answers the door to Claudette's character and he's like hitting his bong and stuff, so he gets a few laughs, but I just felt like they threw that in there maybe as a last minute afterthought because his character is not in much of it, let's put it that way. And then you also have a guy who is like weapons stockpile, like just kind of crazy paranoid dude going around with like his huge, like, dirty, hairy-sized pistol. And so it's about the extent of these other people that are in the home of where the missing grandmother had been living. And then there's a love interest cop who gets involved with Claudette's character and everything. But as you always got in these last few entries, at least, there is a more noteworthy face that's typically in a smaller role. Although in the fourth film, Naomi Watts, yeah, she was our lead lady. And then, what, 5 had... oh, goodness, Eva Longoria, and, I mean, you've seen guys like David Carradine and whatever, so, you know, people who either had previous popularity or went on to find it later, we get that in a role played by Michael Ironside, and I adore Michael Ironside. He is about as just genre revered as you will find. I mean, let's just go down the list of a few major ones. Scanners, Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2, Total Recall, Starship Troopers, even later on Terminator Salvation, and a personal favorite of mine, Turbo Kid, where he's the villain. I love Turbo Kid, but he's a mysterious priest who, he's only in a few scenes, you know, so he's probably on set for like a day or so. You know, that's often how it goes when they get the more noteworthy names for these very small budged, you know, sort of genre flicks and whatnot. But he has like the background of information about the kids, about what happened here. He's the only one who mentions He Who Walks Behind the Rose and, you know, stuff, and any mention of Gatwin. So, but yeah, he's still effective when he's there, you know, for those couple of scenes. And so it's always nice to see a familiar, respected, you know, face in a genre film of this nature. But really, I mentioned the comic relief stoner. There is some amusing product placement of House of the Dead where 2 of the creepy kids are just like, they're in this convenience store and they're like entranced when they see the video game, and Claudette's character is like, yeah, you want to play? And so they start playing the original House of the Dead. The House of the Dead. Love those games, man. Love them, love them, love them, but very blatant product placement by Sega. You know, go figure. That's cool. I already mentioned the stuff with Tiffany the stripper, so that's cool. And also the Urban Harvest connection, at least as far as the fact that there's like vegetables being grown and they're like spoiled, like the corn dude bites into it at one particular time, and you know, it's like blood. And also the fact that it's in this like old, you know, just run down industrial sort of area. And also that whereas so many of the Children of the Corn films, just about all of them are in a remote area of Nebraska. This particular view from, now granted, this building is on an area just right outside of the city, and of course there's some corn rows around it, and you know, there's like train tracks and whatnot, but in this rooftop scene where a character gets thrown off, and it's one of the most cheese dick kills in the entire franchise, he's talking about how great the view is, and you can see like all the city lights right in the distance. So that's why I make the Urban Harvest connection, because it is not one of those where everything is isolated, where everything is remote. This is like just outside of like the major city limits, I guess you could say. But yeah, the kills are friggin' lame in this one, supremely lame. As I mentioned, the character, there's 2 characters that get thrown off of just, you know, high areas and get smashed, and yet no aftermath, like really no gore. There's a bathtub death in this too that is just like, there's some like corn seeds or something that get thrown in the bathtub, and then there's like corn stalks like jumping out and choking and pulling someone down to be drowned. It's so bad, it's so bad. Now, we do get a decapitated head in like, I guess like a refrigerated sort of area at a place, and so I guess that's where all of the gore budget went, was to see this severed head. So, but aside from that, yeah, it's really not a lot to write home about. You know, Guy Maggers, his directing is not bad, but it is very much that late 90s, early 2000s reliance on just weird lighting specifically, like lighting scenes up with like green and red, like very, very distinctively, and also kind of a lame use of just slow motion in certain particular bits. And I also have to say that as far as the performance of the kids in this one, not scary. not foreboding at all. And especially as you pull the curtains back a little bit and you find out about this character named Abel, who was leading this particular contingent of kids that were at least influenced by the overreach of He Who Walks Behind the Rose. But as I said, it's another one of those sequels that, unlike Isaac's Return, the previous film that was very closely connected, especially with the return of that young actor, now all grown up, playing the title role from the first film. This time the kids aren't creepy. They're just cheesy. And it's just like a lot of these like blank stare sort of things and very little dialogue. So, and I'm also one where I enjoy like when the kids are just fire and brimstone, like lots of just heavy lifting of dialogue, and you get that in Urban Harvest. You definitely get that in the original one. They're usually, it seems like in just about all of these, until Revelation, there is at least one very loud, outspoken, creepy kid, and all of the others are like silent, quiet, doing his bloodthirsty bidding. So this might be, as far as like entertainment level for me, the weakest link in the entire series as far as performance goes from the kids. But that's really, and there's some really bad CGI corn stalks like sprouting up. I mean, yeah, it was 2001, granted, sure, but it just really showed the budget, and also the fact that so much of it just takes place in this, just grimy apartment complex sort of place. So, but the performance from our lead, I mean, Claudette is good, Crystal Lowe is fine, the girl who plays the stripper, Tiffany. She was in a bunch of genre stuff, and but in smaller roles. Like she was in Final Destination 3, the Black Xmas movie, the pseudo sequel to the original Black Christmas. What else? Wrong Turn 2, the Joe Lynch. And so, I don't know, I mean, at the end of the day, it's in the running for my least favorite, as I just said, but that doesn't mean that there aren't like amusing, redeeming aspects. And it's like, if you watch a few of the Children of the Corn sequels, you almost owe it to yourself just to watch all of them, just like have a night of like drinks or some greens or something and just binge and have a blast with a bunch of friends. And yeah, so Children of the Corn, it's listed by some as Children of the Corn 7, but in the opening credits of the film, it just says Children of the Corn Revelation. So there you have it. It's not so good, Al, just to answer that. And then here we segue into the final Children of the Corn film that I had never seen. Children of the Corn Genesis. Jenny Smith, Sega Genesis, I don't know, I'm just kidding. But so, just to give it a little bit more history, is that, and this is also a preemptive video in the fact that Heather Smith has not requested this yet, but I am like 99% certain that she is going to, and so I figured just knock out the review, get it done, and also complete the circle, because this is the only Stephen King connected sort of film, because I did Films That Forgot the Face of Their Father. It was a long-term series, and I guess these would be considered in that ilk with the Sometimes They Come Back Again and Pet Sematary 2 and Return to Salem's Lot and whatever. Still the most sequelized of anything connected with Cy King, with 11 films at this particular point. But so after the 2001 film, there were no Children of the Corn movies until 2009, like 8 years later, when that made-for-TV sci-fi one came out that I mentioned, and then they went right into making another one after that, which was this one, Children of the Corn Genesis. And it's definitely one of the most unique. I have to give a lot of credit, not just from a visual standpoint, but just it's not so much alteration of the mythology, but it just expands the reach of the mythology and the capability of the characters, most notably He Who Walks Behind the Rose, and still bringing in the religious aspect, still having some familiar faces. Children of the Corn Genesis came out August 30th of 2011, so 2 years after the Sci-Fi Channel, Dimension with their Extreme label was like, all right, that was a successful remake on Sci-Fi. The property is back in the public eye after 8 years, so let's immediately go into production on another one, which they did. It was actually screened in a very limited theatrical fashion, so the first one to be shown in theaters since The Final Sacrifice, and that was in March of 2011, so, a few months before it finally hit on the home video sector. But this was directed by a guy named Joel Soyson, and this dude has been doing genre shit for long ass time. Like, how far are we going back? way back, as far as like, we were talking going all the way back to the fact that he was the second unit director on Freddy's Revenge, Nightmare on Elm Street 2. He had the same job on Trick or Treat, not Trick or Treat, not to be confused. Trick or Treat was the heavy metal horror movie that had cameos from like Ozzy and I think Gene Simmons too, but entertaining film, some fun hair metal bits, and you know, the demon worship aspect of being into heavy metal at the time. And then this dude went on to produce, write, direct all kinds of different things, mostly of the direct-to-video variety and of the sequelizing well-known franchises or just previous films. And so he had a part on, like, get this, everything from Maniac Cop 3 to the Prophecy films, Kristopher Walken, Phantoms, who the bomb and Phantoms, yo. And it keeps going. Mimic 2, he did that horrible Highlander Endgame movie, and if I remember, that was the one with both Duncan and Connor McLeod in it, and I was so excited for it, and it was awful. All the Pulse movies, I think there's like 2 or 3 of those. Hollow Man 2, yeah, the direct-to-video sequel of the Kevin Bacon's Bacon. He was also a part of the Feast movie, and that Project Greenlight show that Ben Affleck and Matt Damon put together, and so he assisted with that on a producer standpoint. Hellraiser, Hellworld, he was behind the story of that one, the Lance Henriksen, Henry Cavill one that was retrofitted into being a Hellraiser movie, but I actually quite like that one. We reviewed all the Hellraiser movies on the horror show about a year or so ago, and it was interesting, to say the least. I felt like it was a similar sort of situation where I had to approach it in the right mindset, like I have these Children of the Corn movies. And so he wrote and directed this one, the just kind of altering expansion of the mythology, as I was mentioning, and then he also wrote the next Children of the Corn film that waited a number of years itself. They didn't make another Children of the Corn film until 2018 when they did Runaway. And Heather and anybody else who is interested, I will put a link to that in the description below, because I reviewed that one right when it came out, and boy, that film is bad compared to this one, because I thought Children of the Corn Genesis was interesting. It was. I dug it, and the performances from our leads were good. I don't know who Tim Rock was, but he's the husband of this woman played by Kellen Coleman, and I was like trying to figure out what the hell I had seen her in, and she was on some episodes of The Office, so I was like, that's what it was. Okay, so Kellen plays his wife, and it's got some similarities to the original film and short story in the fact that, you know, a couple is broken down, except in this case, they're broken down in like a rural, deserty area of California, and they basically leave their vehicle to go walk and find any sort of home, anybody who can help them, make a phone call, get some repair people out there, whatever it may be. And the chemistry between the two of them is good, between Kellen and Tim. And yeah, it's got a slight bit of self-awareness to its horror, which I don't know, I always greatly appreciate, and it's always cute. And the person who is he's our mysterious one, because I'm trying to figure out his intention, and you waver back between, is he good? Is he evil? How sane is he? And it's another priest, so we had a priest in Michael Ironside in the previous film, and in this one, our priest is played by none other than Billy Drago. And Billy Drago made a name for himself in all kinds of genre stuff. I mean, I know he guest starred on an episode of Supernatural, and we guest starred on The X-Files. I know he was on Charmed for a while playing that demon dude, so that's cool, but the first thing I ever saw him in was when he was in Scorsese's theater. Was it Scorsese or De Palma? Damn, I'm losing all my cred. But the Untouchables film, the one that had De Niro and Kevin Costner and Sean Connery. Such a great fucking movie. Oh, I've been wanting to rewatch that recently. So, and then he was also in Tremors 4. He was that, it was like Black Hand something. He was one of the gunslinger dudes. He was in the Hills Have Eyes remake. So, he's sadly no longer with us, rest peacefully, but he did so much recognizable stuff on both the big and the small screen. So he's very effective in this, in you just questioning his intentions, his involvement, because it's his home that this couple finds themselves at, and then he also has this mysterious wife who is from overseas, it's the girl who was like, I think, Natalia in Hostel, and so, yeah, think about that, and as far as possible intentions and stuff like that, and the couple, they know there's some weirdness afoot, because both of these people act strange. And then in turn, they find out that there is a child that is essentially being just like held in this like barn sort of area. And of course the couple is like, oh, this is horrible, so on and so forth. And, you know, Kellen's character especially, our final girl essentially, she is very much trying to figure out what's going on with that kid, why it's kind of locked away. And that's another mystery that you're trying to figure out. Is this kid good? Is this kid evil? And it's well directed too. I mean, you know, Joel Soyson having directed and written and produced and EP'd and been just involved in genre filmmaking for decades at this particular point. He hasn't directed as much as he's produced and written, if I'm not mistaken, but he does a really good job. And he also, with his writing, brings in a flashback at the very beginning of the movie, which goes back to Gatlin, 1973, if I remember correctly. And there's a soldier coming home from Vietnam, and the evil kids that we see taking over Gatlin in this, like, I guess, you know, like prologue flashback sort of thing to the original short story in the first film, they're chanting at him that he is a baby killer. We all know that a lot of soldiers that were over there killing kids and women and all kinds of craziness when they were losing it over in Nam. So I thought that was an interesting little touch, but that's just really, you know, a little, you know, prologue scene at the beginning of the film, because the rest of it takes place in California. I saw somebody mentioning that this is the only film that was not, like, set in, like, the Nebraska-y, like, Midwest sort of area, and not true, because once again, Urban Harvest takes place in Chicago, even though they filmed it in California. So, but in any event, yeah, well directed, and even the opening credits with, like, some of these little miniature figurines and stuff that they have, and just the performances, I thought, from everybody. Our four leads specifically. I mean, there's a cop that shows up to investigate. I don't even think he has any dialogue, if I remember correctly. And you do also get a small cameo in the third act from none other than Dwayne Whitaker, who everybody remembers from the Gimp scene. I think his character's name was Maynard in Pulp Fiction, but yeah, the pawn shop owner, and, you know, with Zed and everything, those sick bastards. Yeah, so he's in this, and I know he's also done his fair share of genre stuff. Tales from the Hood. He was in the From Dusk Till Dawn sequel, Texas Blood Money, in a smaller role. Rob Zombie also liked him. Rob Zombie put him in Devil's Rejects. He also put him in the second zombie Halloween movie, and so this surprised me. And I dug just how they altered the fact that, you know, there was a, like, supernatural presence. And yes, you know, He Walks Behind the Rose, supernatural presence, obviously. But there's almost like a telekinetic, you know, sort of Carrie-ish type vibe. And trying to figure out, is it the priest? Is it, you know, the wife from overseas? Is it maybe the kid? Is it all of them? Is it none of them? Is it something completely different that's just, like, kind of taken over this house? Because you do find out that, what's his name? Drago's character, the priest, he's originally from Gatlin. And so did a presence follow him there? I dug this movie, and I did not expect to at all. I was impressed with Children of the Corn Genesis from a production standpoint, from an acting standpoint, and also from just a storytelling standpoint, too. And, of course, you have to have some creepy cornfield dream sequence stuff. I mean, ever since The Stand, you know, and I think that Children of the Corn was even written before The Stand, you know. But, yeah, it's like kind of it's a hallmark of all of the Children of the Corn films, just about. It's been a few months now since I've taken in those earlier entries, like, you know, 3, 4, 5, and 6 and stuff. But nonetheless, I dug Children of the Corn Genesis, and going in without high hopes or the burden of expectation, and also the fact that I was so just not impressed with Revelation, and for this to feel unique and feel different and feel like it was being innovative with some of the different ideas that it was combining, I gotta say, Heather, and to all of the Hail Ka-Tak, that I dug Children of the Corn Genesis. I believe it's streaming on Tubi as of this recording, and it's one that, if you're only moderately, like, into the mythos, it's another good thing about the Children of the Corn films, is that as long as you have, like, a general idea about the concept and the approach to these movies, killer kids in cornfields and, you know, like, kind of a demonic presence, it's all you need. You can go into this without having watched any of the other ones, and I think relatively, just, I don't know, impressed and just enjoy yourself. So, once again, that is my thoughts and the culmination of the Children of the Corn franchise coverage here on The Horror Show, my thoughts on 2011's Genesis, and the one before, Children of the Corn Revelation, which is housed in this particular 6-film set. So, once again, a grande gracias to everybody watching and to Heather Smith for the support. Supremely appreciated. I have been Jaime and Fuego. You can find Wa on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube, where a like, a share, a subscribe is supremely appreciated. And if you would like to become a patron yourself, ask us about films to review, commentaries to do, lots of cool stuff that we take care of. We have a monthly boogie box if you want to be as rad status supportive as possible. Trying to think, yeah, lots of fun King coverage that will be coming, at least in the near future. I mean, every week, like I said, Tower Tuesday is when I do this. We have a book of the month that will have switched over from Everything's Eventual when you look at that, and it is going to be none other than The Running Man, the Bachman book. So in the month of April, at the culmination of that particular month, we will be doing a live discussion all about that Bachman sci-fi classic that I think is incredibly underrated, and so many people just think of the slight silliness of the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, but it's damn good. The book is very good, and yes, jump back and if you have any inclination, check out those older Children of the Corn reviews. I'm going to make just a playlist of all the Children of the Corn coverage at this particular point, and yeah, it's going to be the end of the proceedings, everybody. So until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, San Amigos, constant readers and viewers alike, say thank you. I am hoping that we have been well met and that we share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. And until then, remember to stay scared and read Stephen King. I mean, if you haven't ever read the OG short story that was collected in Night Shift, it's simple, it's scary, and it's effective. And, you know, Genesis of these two actually surprised me. And I think if you're a fan of the series, you will find some enjoyment in Revelation as well.